What is up, everybody? Gary Simon here. So for a long time, I've had the request of doing a dashboard design, how to create and design a dashboard from scratch, and we're going to use Figma for that. And I'm going to show you how to do like a tablet version, and I'm going to give you all sorts of tips in terms of coloring and just alignment and basic fundamentals as well. If you're really interested in taking it a step further, I want you to definitely check out DesignCourse.com, because I'm going to include in that here within the next week in the bonus section of DesignCourse.com's curriculum. Right under here, I'm going to show you how to take the design we create today, the dashboard, and make it responsive and truly interactive. So here at DesignCourse.com, I teach people UI UX design in this course, and you get over 16 hours of content and also interactive modules and also a dozen challenge projects. And you can even add on mentorship with me if you want to learn from me and help me guide you. So definitely check out DesignCourse.com. Use the coupon code UI2022 rather at checkout to get 22% off. And let's get started. Alrighty, let's go ahead and click New Design File once you get Figma up and running. I'm using Figma Desktop. One of the advantages of that is you get access to fonts that you have installed in your system. So now we're going to click on the Frame tool. All right, and so over here, we're going to want to choose the desktop one just to get started. I am actually going to adjust this so that we're not really going to be designing for desktop, but that's usually what I start with, and I really just want to change the width to 1100. All right, and then we'll change the height here manually to around here. So this is actually going to be a very small desktop or to like a large tablet or something like that. And now we're going to change the background color to something dark, because I know I want to deal with a light mode. So typically I'll change the canvas color for that reason. Whatever's opposite of, if it's a dark UI, I'll probably change it to a light background. That's one of the things that frustrates me about Adobe XD. I'm not sure if they updated it yet, but you can't change the background. It's always like this light gray, and it's a pain sometimes depending on your color. Anyhow, so I'm going to go ahead, and I already designed a logo for this, so I'm just going to paste it in right here. By the way, you can have access to this Figma document. I'll link it. All you have to do is save it to your desktop and then just drag it on top of your Figma interface where you're at this screen. Just drag it right on from your desktop or a folder, and it will download it, and then you can open it up, and then you can just gain access to the assets at least. Now, one thing I do want to do before we place that, actually I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, no big deal, is let's just establish a background color. Now, typically when it comes to these dashboard designs, you will notice that there's a background color, and then there's usually a panel that sits on top of it. Now, you don't necessarily have to go with that route, but you typically see that. So I wanted to do that type of idea. And what I mean by that, by the way, you don't have to follow along, is you'll see this situation. So you'll have some white space here and then a panel that kind of just holds everything, like your dashboard. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to go light or you want to go dark? All right, so we're going to go light. That means we could use white if we wanted to, but that's typically not what you see. Over here, what we see is maybe just slightly off-white. Notice how it's a little bit gray now, light gray. Or you can actually introduce color as well. So we're actually going to do that, and I'm going to use something right around here. So the color code for that, the hex code, is DBE8F4. All right, and then for that panel or the rectangle that sits on top, you can hit R to access that. We'll drag it roughly around here so it's roughly centered. We can make white. All right, so notice how it's a very low contrast separation between this panel and the background. Now, if we were dealing with a dark mode design, it would look something more like this. So we take our background, we'll make it dark, maybe like almost like a dark, like a slate blue color. Then we'll hit I for the eyedropper tool, make it the same color, and then increase it slightly. So these are kind of the light mode version of this approach, and here's the dark mode. All right. So let's give ourselves some rounded corners. I'm going to use 18 or so. So I'm putting that up here, right in the rounded corner section. And we want to make sure this is centered vertically and horizontally, so we can use these elements right up here and here. So I'll click that and that. There we go. Now it's perfectly centered. Now let's get that logo back up, and we're going to put it roughly right around here. Now for the width of this, I do want to make sure I'm using something, yeah, this is actually exactly what I wanted. Okay, like around 863 for the width up here. So now we have a logo that's left aligned, very typical pattern that you see in most websites and everything. Nothing, no big deal here. We're also going to have two different navigations. Now, when it comes to a dashboard, you'll usually have a sidebar navigation. And then sometimes you'll even have a primary or secondary navigation that's kind of right aligned up here. That's a typical pattern. Doesn't have to be so. It all depends on the needs of your project, essentially. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put in kind of like a secondary nav up here, and then we'll work on the sidebar nav over here. So this font for this little logo I made is called Aileron, Aileron or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you can download that font and then open it up here on Figma Desktop. So I'm just going to use the type tool, and we'll just type in home, and we will make it regular. And for the actual size, we're going to use something real small, 14. All right, you don't really want to go lower than 14. And then we'll replicate this, Alt, Shift, and just drag over. Right around there, 26 between them. And we'll first, let's update this. We'll change this to support. And then we'll duplicate that, hold Shift, make sure you get the, there we go, the little guides, so we have equal white space between them. And then let's do a My Account. And then maybe we'll have a secondary menu of some sort. So to do that, make sure you go to Plugins, and then you can click over here, Browse Plugins. I'm going to use one called Iconify. So go ahead and install that if you don't have it installed already. I'm going to search for menu. All right, so right here, I really like this one. It's an interesting take of a menu. I'm going to drag it on, and then we will place it right up here. And that's pretty good right there. All right, so notice this small, there's a lot of details occurring here that you may not be aware of. First of all, we have white space. I'm not putting the logo up here. I'm not putting it in too far. I have it in a very specific location where we have an equal amount of white space from the top to the side. Same thing over here, equal amount of white space. If I hit Shift R, we can drag out a ruler here or a guide. You can see everything's centered along the same line as well. So these things matter. These are UI design fundamentals and UI design principles that I really discuss a lot, especially throughout that course at DesignCourse.com. It helps to develop that eye. Now, continuing on, let's do a sidebar navigation over here. Now, typically, because we're working on something that's like a small desktop or a large tablet, you may want to collapse your sidebar dashboard navigation from having an icon with a label to just an icon. And we're going to make that assumption that's what we're doing here. And it's just going to be a icon-based navigation. Now, the intention is, like, if a person hovers over that, it will actually show a label. And that will be available in the full course at DesignCourse.com. But for now, we're just going to design it as is without any of that interactivity. Before we get to that point, though, notice how we can definitely see this white panel. It's low contrast with the background. To help even reinforce a little bit more contrast, we can actually add a soft drop shadow. We can add multiple of them, and I'll show you what I mean. So we'll take this background. We're going to add rather an effect right over here. We're going to click that plus icon. All right, so plus, and it's a drop shadow, as you can see by default. And then we click over here. Now notice it gives you this basic drop shadow. You can use it if you wish, but we're going to make it a little bit different. So we're going to come over here into settings, and for this drop shadow, this first one, we're going to change it to 8 on the X axis, 8 on the Y, and then for the blur, we're going to change to 40. All right. So additionally, so if I zoom up, you can kind of see the settings. I don't like using black or anything devoid of color on a colored background. So what we can do is we can change the color right here in this color picker, and we'll grab the background color currently, and then we'll kind of pull it down or just move it around to where it's very subtle. Now, we could go like this and then just adjust the opacity as well. But I think there's a little bit too much color, maybe more desaturated. So that is 7D99B4 for that hex code and at 20% opacity. So I like this, but we can actually make it a more realistic shadow if we add another one. So by doing that, we have one on top, and for our one on the top, we're going to change it to 4 on the X, 4 on the Y, and 4 on the blur. And then we are also going to get this background color here, kind of do the same thing, but take the opacity way down, like right around there at 11%. And that color code is 5690C6. All right, looking good so far. Now we're going to duplicate this, Control D on your keyboard, and then we're going to hold Alt and drag it in right around here. And this time, we're going to do something a little bit interesting. We're going to offset it to the side of the nav, just to make it look kind of interesting. Now, you want to make sure that you take the border radius all the way up so that we have a pill shape. All right, just like that. I think we may make this a little bit larger, like there. I think that's pretty good. So the width of that is 55. And then we're going to make this pill shape, this little icon-based nav holder, essentially, something that really contrasts well. So we're going to change the fill, and we could do this. We could take this background color, so our only current color here, and then just really saturate it high. We could do something like that, but you can also experiment with different hues. So I like, maybe right around there looks pretty solid to me. And that color code is 8400EC. All right. So now we need some icons. So if you go to the Figma community, if you just click here and then you go to community and then you search, or you click on icons rather, Basil's one of the first one. So when you click that, just click duplicate, and then you will have access to if you click on full preview under pages, to all these really well designed icons that are outlined and filled. So it's really solid. And so grab just any few of these. This isn't a real project. We just kind of want to give ourselves some context. And so I already grabbed a few of those and I made them white. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste these over here. Now, if I drag them right here, you see which ones I chose. And by the way, when you import them, they will be black at first. So if that's the case, if we bring them back in, we can change where it says selection colors. It's going to say black right here. All you have to do is just change that black to whatever you want, and it will adjust the icons for you. All right, so now I'm going to drag this just right here. And I've made sure that there's even or equal white space in between each one of those. And again, you do that through the help of the smart guides when you're moving things around. See, if I move things around, you can see, yep, perfect, 26 and 26. And wow, I made this the perfect height, by the way. I got lucky. All right, so now just to simulate maybe like a hover state or something like that, my phone's going off. We'll change to an ellipse. We'll add a circle. We'll put it behind, let's see here. Yeah, right there. We'll grab the current color it's on and we'll just make it slightly darker. So that color code is 6000AC. Let me mute my phone because it is going off right now. All right, and down. Okay, awesome. Now in the full course, we're gonna actually make this function. Like when you click play, you hover over it, you'll see this stuff. So definitely check that out at DesignCourse.com. And All right, so far so good. Now let's go ahead and add some actual content. Now, before we do that, the context here is we just lack enough space when we're at this particular viewport here. The intention would be to, once you get to a certain width, like in a browser or on a device, we would actually open this up into a more full UI. For example, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste something like this right here. But we're not going to do that. That's going to be included in the DesignCourse.com version. All right. I do kind of like a different color that I originally created, so I am going to adjust that real quick. So that color code is 602BF8 if you want to follow along. And of course, that means we need to change this as well. Perhaps a better approach would be to make this black and then just take down the opacity, all right, right around 25%. Perfect. All right, I like that color a little bit better than the one I chose before. Okay, so now we're going to work on the actual content section. So the content section of a dashboard typically consists of cards. That's the pattern that's commonly used. Now we've chosen a white background for this. So our cards, it's nice to be able to see the cards, and we have a few different options and a few different ways of doing that. So let's go ahead and get a rectangle here, and I'm going to say we'll make it probably around 200 pixels wide. All right, right around there. And we do want to use rounded corners because we're using rounded corners here as well. So you don't want to mix like hard edge, right angle corners with rounded corners. So one thing also though, when you have a square or a card inside of an overall container, naturally speaking, the border radius should be lesser than this one. So this one's 18. So maybe we can try something like 14 for this one. All right. Now, something I see sometimes people doing. Now, this has to do with color and color theory. In order to see this card, they might do something like grab this background and then just have cards like that. Actually, we're going to want to make these cards probably quite a bit wider as it currently stands. There we go. Yeah, right around there. So that width is now actually 238. Okay, so this is a fine approach. Or you can go even lighter if you want. I mean, we're really lighter already. Something like that, very low contrast card. You can do that, or we can do this. We can change it to white, of course, at which we don't see it anymore, but we can use drop shadows. So what we can do is we currently have a drop shadow here and on here. And if we click on this little icon where we have 4 little dots and then the plus sign right there, we can add it as a new style. So we'll just call this drop shadow. And then now we can apply, if we click on effects, we can choose this right here, drop shadow. All right, so now we see the same exact shadow that's placed on it. And guess what? We can see a very subtle, low contrast, interesting representation. It makes it feel like it's 3D sitting on top. And I really like that approach. Now, just like I said, when it comes to the border radiuses and how it should be smaller on the inside, on elements on the inside, like child elements, so too, I think you should probably approach that with like drop shadows. So maybe we should unlink or detach this style and then make adjustments to this one. Maybe this one will be 30 of a blur, and then maybe 6 on the X and 6 on the Y. And then same thing with this. Like maybe this can be 2 and 2. Yeah, something like that. That way it's a little bit more subtle, although you could still see it and it's a nice aesthetic. All right, so now let's put some information in this card. So we're gonna have a label for each card, and I'm gonna choose to caps lock or title case, not title case, but all caps lock for this. So this is gonna say new messages. Again, this is for a fictional live chat application for websites or something like that. For this, I think we're gonna go pretty small, and I'm gonna make it just regular. All right, so for the size, I'm double checking on my other area. We can also make this light if we wish as well. And then let's create some big contrast, typographic visual hierarchy it's called. This is going to be the actual value, like how many new messages there have been maybe within the last 24 hours or something like that. We're going to make this bold, and yes, we are going to make this large and in charge. So we're going to go from 14 maybe to like 40. Look at that. So in terms of visual hierarchy, which is placing priority and like what is it that you want a person to see first, the thing that a person would see first, their eyes would be immediately drawn to, is probably going to be this little 85 right here, or this big 85 rather. Next up, we can have an icon just to make this a little bit more interesting and give it context with an icon. So using that Basil icons tab, I found a little chat app right here. So we're just going to stick it, make sure it's aligned pretty good right there. All right, and now with dashboards, typically you see things like progress, percentage bars. You can see radial percentage bars and stuff like that. So let's work one in here and create our own. So let's pull this down just a bit, and I'm going to, this one's just going to be a progress bar. So we're going to take our rectangle tool, drag out from here to there. Notice the width is starting on this column. So there's a invisible column here, Shift R, right there. Of course, we want to make sure things are aligned to it. There we go. And based on that white space, now this is actually off. Notice how there's probably more white space here than there is here. So one of the things you can do to combat that situation is you can right click and we can choose to frame this. All right, so frame selection. It gives you the option of a layout grid right here. All right, so we click plus and we choose columns, and we'll just give ourselves some margin just to experiment, like what's 80. All right, so that certainly did not work. What is happening? Let's try 30. There we go. All right, so this time let's try 25. Perfect. So as you can see, and by the way, the number of columns, we could just make that 1. It doesn't even matter. Now we can see that there's a clear equal. This is completely equal white space, and that's how you achieve that perfection, by making these adjustments. There, perfect. So now we can go back to this and we can just turn this off. So let's hide that and let's hit Shift R to get rid of the guides. All right, so now going back to our progress bar, we're gonna go ahead and choose purple. All right, so this is known as the track, I believe. So we'll take this purple. This is gonna be a part that's not filled in, if that makes sense. So we'll come down, maybe somewhere around here, pretty desaturated and relatively low contrast, but not too low. Then we're going to make it pill shaped. So just take that border radius and really just crank it up to the right. So we have perfect pill shapes over here. Then we will duplicate that with Control D. Oh, and sometimes when that happens, if you're selected on one of the fills or something like that, it'll duplicate that instead of this element. So just select back on it, then hit Control D, and that will duplicate it. So we'll put it around here, and now we're gonna really crank this up, or rather just grab this color over here, and there we go. So that's a little progress bar that we have. And then we're going to give it a label. We're going to put the label underneath here, and I'll tell you why in a second. We'll say response rate. All right, and under we're going to make this one bold. We're going to change it to 12 and also bold though. There we go. And then we're going to create a little blip that shows the value, like percentage wise. So this might be 75% of this available space. So what we can do is duplicate this card background. Oh, yeah. So we've duplicated it, but right now it's a frame. So I'm just going to hit ungroup. That makes it not be a frame anymore. And then I'm going to scale it down. We're going to take down the border radius, and I'm going to hit T for type, and inside of it we're going to put in 75%, and we're just going to make this regular. Well, I made that size pretty solid, didn't I? All right. Now, next up, I want to have a little bit of a down arrow worked into this shape. So to do that, we'll take the pen tool, hold shift, left click, hold shift to make a triangle. And then get rid of the stroke and just give it a fill. The fill can be white for now. Then we're going to select this element and that element. And then we're going to go ahead and choose Union Selection. Now, when you do that, this goes away, unfortunately. So what we'll do, yeah, keep that back there. There we go. What we'll do now, we'll select, let's see here, this, and we are going to, let's see here. There we go. We're going to add this. We'll say drop shadow smaller. We'll come back here and select that. Go back to our effects, drop shadow smaller. Now it's added it back. Now we also need to take our 75%, put it on top of that union right there. All right, great. So now we could take this and this, move it with our keyboard. All right, and that looks good. And then one final thing we could do is create kind of like a separator here, a line separator that separates this top section from this bottom section. So it'll be a low contrast, 1 pixel line, kind of like that. Right now it's high contrast because it's black. Now, with that, let's go ahead and just use our purple color and then just really make it light. Now, I do also want it behind that little percentage area. So I think it has too much pink to it, so we can just take out a lot of the color. Something like that. Move this up. Right around there. All right, so that is it for the very first one, our first card rather. So now this is just a matter of go ahead and let's go ahead and take this logo and lock it so we don't select it. We're gonna take this, Control D to duplicate, and then duplicate that one. We'll move this over to make sure it's on this column over here. Select all this, deselect all the other stuff, holding shift, and there we go, even perfect. So then we can go ahead and let's change this one to new leads. All right, I'm gonna get rid of that one. I have another one from that basil icon set that I have off to the side. Let's get that pasted right over here. All right, so new leads, we'll say 21. We're gonna change this up. I'll show you how to do a radial progress bar. Yep, don't wanna do that. There we go. And we'll finally get rid of that as well. So to do a radial progress bar, we'll take our ellipse tool, come out right around here. You can always change the size later. And we will get rid of the fill and we'll get a stroke. All right, so the stroke will probably push up to around, I'd say 6 or so. And then we'll also change the stroke color to the same color right here on the track. So that's the first one. Then we're gonna duplicate it. Now for this one, we're going to have to use a mask. And let's first change the color here to that. All right, so this would be obviously 100% filled radial progress bar, but we don't want that. We want to change it to something different. So to do that, we'll take the pen tool. We'll come up here around the top, hold shift, come down around here, hold shift, and we'll just come around like this and connect it, get rid of the stroke, just add a fill. We can make the color of the fill doesn't matter. We just want this now, this vector that we created, hit escape. We want it to go underneath. Let's see where this element is. Okay, right there. So we have this vector, we have to put it underneath there. So now we selected both of these elements and we could choose this, which is the mask. Very cool stuff. All right, so now what we can do is, and by the way, I think I'm gonna wanna notice the thickness of this versus this. This is a lot thicker. So what we can do is take these and we can kind of match them up That's a little bit better. I held the Alt key or Option key, and I just kind of dragged that down, and that kind of flattened it a little bit. And of course, when you do that, you're going to want to adjust this one. So I'm going to delete those, just group these up, Control D to duplicate, and then just shift that back over there. There we go. Now it's more consistently approached in terms of the design. So now we can just put in a little bit of more text. We'll take new leads right here. We'll just put in maybe 60% daily goal. And we're going to make this one small too, like 20%. Actually, let's get rid of that daily goal. Let's make this one, let's see here, bold. I'll duplicate that, daily goal. We'll make this one light or regular. We'll take these two, duplicate. Put another stat here, like 72. We'll right align it to this section, and then put maybe this week. And then finally, we can put, we'll duplicate this here. We'll just say goal. And then we'll grab these two elements, duplicate them. Oh no, I didn't get the other element. Let's see here. All right, so now we can copy those. Now we can paste these, and we'll put it maybe like right around here. We'll change this up to maybe like 62. All right. We could probably take these two and bring them down a bit. There you go. So as you can see, we can create a nice consistent aesthetic across multiple cards, even though they're kind of styled differently based on the needs of the project. I'm not going to bother with customizing this one just because this isn't a real project, and hopefully you're starting to understand how these layouts and such work. So we'll leave that there. And then finally, I want to show you a real cool trick to use and integrate a live chart, or not a live chart, but a realistic looking chart, like a line chart or whatever. So what we'll do is take our rectangle tool, and we're going to drag it out from the very left where this card starts to the end of where this card starts. Could choose a background color, just use the same, it's just white. And then right click, plugins. You're going to have to go to Browse Plugins in Community, and that plugin is right here called Chart, right there, okay? So I already have it. I'm going to go to Chart and Create Chart. So what's cool is it gives you this UI from which you can choose like a random chart. You can put the number of lines, number of points, blah, 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 blah. So for me, I'm going to put number of lines, just 1. And then number of points is 30, and I'm going to leave it like that, and then just hit Create Chart. Now, by the way, you can see all these other chart types that you can create here. This is just a simple line chart. Now, by default, let's go ahead and click it. And over here for selection colors based on this group that was created, sorry, my throat was messed up. We can choose this blue, which is what the line color is, and change it to our primary color right here. Now you can also see, look how good that looks, by the way. You can also see there's an X and Y axis where you can actually change the text as well. So that's a little like a mid-gray. I'm going to make that black just for maximum contrast. And then you could come in on your own, of course, and adjust this text down here where it just says text, 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 text as needed. Right now, I'm not going to bother with that. And there you go. So look at how well polished and just great this UI looks. And of course, this all comes down to the fact that I have a ton of experience. And that's exactly what I teach at DesignCourse.com. And you will be able to see me actually create this layout from scratch and make everything interactive with a true prototype. So definitely consider joining DesignCourse.com to gain access to this specific tutorial, along with 16 hours worth of other content across a ton of modules. All right, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed that. Now, if you're really interested in understanding how to take the project that we just created and doing it the correct way with components and interactivity and responsiveness. Definitely check out DesignCourse.com, join up, and you can use the coupon code UI2022 to get 22% off. And also, if you're in a different part of the world where the US dollar is worth a lot more than your own currency, then you can also get parity pricing, which can get you as much as 40% off. So definitely check that out. But when you join up, you will go ahead and you will be able to see how to do this properly in the context of a full real project, and also get access to 16 hours worth of other content, a bunch of other projects that's really just going to help you learn UI UX design in an interactive fashion. All right, I'll stop talking. Make sure to subscribe, comment, leave a like, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.